Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today, where we're going to be introducing you to the CCH IQ Premium content that's now available within BOMA. My name is Susie Hardy and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join today's session. Just before we get started, I'd like to cover some housekeeping things to go over with you. So what you do have is a GoToMeeting panel. You can click on the little orange arrow as indicated here. It may already be collapsed to the right hand side of your screen to be able to open up this panel. Most of you today are dialed on using your computer audio. However, if there is any trouble with the sound, you can change the radio button to phone call. The way we communicate is by using the questions panel, so you're welcome to come in and type any question via the chat box, not forgetting to hit the send button to come through to us. You should know that you are on mute and you will remain on mute throughout today's session. Today's session has also been recorded and a link to the on-demand recording will be sent to all webinar registrants within 24 hours after this live session. So I'd like to now hand you over to Charles, who's going to take you through the introduction today. So here you go, Charles, I'll just make you the presenter.
Right.
Should be able to go share my screen. That's it. I can see your screen perfectly, Charles. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Susie. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today and giving us your time. My name is Charles Clark. I'm the co-founder and marketing director of BOMA and thrilled to be joined today by Liz Studham, who's our content marketing manager, and also Ben Miller, who is Wolters Kluwer Senior Content Management Analyst. Hi, Ben and Liz. Great to do another one of these sessions together.
Hi, Charles. Thanks for having us and nice to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Charles.
Great. So before I hand over to Ben, who will obviously do a bit of a deep dive into the content itself, I just wanted to give you a quick background of our partnership together in case you're not familiar. So BOMA and Wolters Kluwer have been in partnership in New Zealand for about 18 months. And you probably have also seen some Wolters Kluwer content available in your content library in Australia if you do have BOMA already. And the Wolters Kluwer content proved so popular in New Zealand that we decided to launch a premium Wolters Kluwer library in Australia as well. And this is off the back of their CCH IQ content in particular. And the reason why we obviously want to have this content in our library is because it provides accounting firms with actionable, customer-facing content and tools of industry events, such as legislative change, and it really is going to help drive growth and revenue opportunities within your existing client base. And so the concept behind the partnership is to allow you to take this information, so the CCH IQ information, and easily disseminate it via BOMA to your clients and prospects. So the old days where you may have had to mail merge Word documents and print letters are behind us, and what we're offering today is a much more streamlined and efficient process. Now, the value of the Wolters Kluwer content is that Wolters Kluwer are across developments as they happen. They have a really switched on content team and they look after daily tax news. And as a result of that, they know immediately when things are happening in Australian tax and adjust the content accordingly based on the customer need. The great thing is that they do this in real time updating, and Ben will talk a little bit more about that in greater detail when he goes through the content. But what it all comes back to is Wolters Kluwer digital first approach. And in the digital world that we all live in now, you really want to find things quickly and efficiently. So items that Ben's going to cover later, like topic guides and practical tools, are at the forefront of this concept of efficiency and especially practice efficiency. So in the digital world, not only do you want to access to deep research and commentary, the Wolters Kluwer content is also going to provide you with practical explanations, quick answers, workflow tools, and calculators. So that's a bit of the background of the value of Wolters Kluwer content and why we were so keen to have it available in BOMA to accountants. But Ben, I'll hand over to you now, and you're, I think, going to do a bit of a deeper dive into the actual CCH IQ and how it can help.
Yeah, thank you, Charles, and I'm very, very happy to be here today. Sorry, Charles.
Sorry. I just mucked up with the screen. Sorry, Ben. Over to you. Sorry.
Not a problem, not a problem whatsoever. I noticed there I got the little button and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm planning. What I'm planning to do is probably take you into a bit more detail about what Charles sort of mentioned there. And I think the key point that Charles mentioned about how we help the market with CCHIQ is that daily news, is our review of daily tax news. So one thing that I did, the first thing that I did when I logged on this morning, is I looked at the daily tax news that had happened over the previous day, and I started to piece together information in which, using that daily news to sort of understand and pitch to myself, would this potential item in the daily news be a trigger event? What a trigger event is perhaps something that comes from the courts or from our legislators in Parliament House in Canberra or in the other state parliaments. It could come from commerce or the regulators, and they also just could be macroeconomic events that happen to us or happen to our business clients throughout the year. So what I do and what our team does is we digest this daily news and we get an understanding about what benefit an accounting firm will get from being able to provide this information in real time as quickly as possible to their clients, because that's ultimately the goal for an accountant trying to look at getting new business opportunities from a tax advisory perspective, and also an opportunity to consolidate the relationships. So a lot of you on the call may have clients that have just joined your firm in the last sort of 12 months, or a few of them may be, said maybe you might be thinking that they are looking elsewhere or coming at you with a lot of different ideas, and you're asking yourself, where are they getting this information from? One thing that we try to do with CCHIQ is we try to provide you with an opportunity to directly speak to them about things that will directly affect them. And then that's essentially how we look at it. Obviously we use technology that runs through the news, so we don't actually have to read every single piece of regulation or legislative instrument from from start to finish in order to determine the few things that are really important to discuss with your clients. We use technology to sort of drill down into it, so that we're really using the majority of our time digesting and analyzing these pieces of news that come in every day, in order to provide that best piece of communication that you can provide to your clients. The other thing that we also try to do within CCHIQ is we try and provide you with a client profile within the platform, so that you can, instead of sending out one big group newsletter to everybody, you can start to individualize the communications that you have with your clients. They feel like they're getting a much more intuitive service that is directly related to their needs, as opposed to wading through a bunch of documentation that they're not necessarily going to benefit from. So ultimately, that's, as sort of Charles mentioned at the beginning, the daily news wrap is our place to start, and from there we utilize our expertise that is throughout all of the Wolters Kluwer and CCH Australia products to provide practical, actionable content when something like an industry trigger event happens, so that you can provide information directly to the clients who will be most impacted by that particular event. So without further ado, I think that's a pretty easy and pretty concise wrap up of really what CCHIQ is. And now what I'd like to do is actually sort of provide you a little bit more meat in the sandwich. And if I could get Liz to join me on this call, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually run through some of the more recent trigger events that have happened in the Australian tax landscape. So if I could pass over to you, Liz, and you could show the the people on the call, how it all looks in the BOMA platform.
Great, thanks, Ben. So I'm just going to click on my screen and hopefully just let me know when you can see that and we'll get started.
Absolutely, can see it clearly.
Yep, all go. Great. So yeah, thanks so much, Ben. We're obviously delighted to be, as Charles mentioned, partnering with Wolters Kluwer CCH. What you're looking at now, for those of you who are not familiar with BOMA, is the BOMA platform, and we're currently on the dashboard. So just in a nutshell, to give you a really brief overview of what BOMA is, we are a digital marketing platform built specifically for accountants and bookkeepers. And it's important that we are only for you, because when we're providing content, it needs to be written in your voice for your clients. So just very briefly, within the platform, you can create, and if I click on the create button, you can see that you can create emails, social media updates, you can create lead forms. So this is if you are starting a newsletter and you're capturing emails for a newsletter. You might be giving away a lead magnet, such as a downloadable guide on tax. You're capturing email addresses, or you might be having an event or something. So you can create lead forms and you can advertise on social. The thing that makes BOMA different from other marketing platforms, though, is the content, and you can see the most recent content here on the dashboard. Let's go into the content library, and then we can see, go into a little bit of a dive into some of the Wolters Kluwer content. So you can filter here using a search term such as cash flow, for example. If we type cash flow, you can see there's quite a bit in here. You can filter using these global categories. And under the libraries, you can see we've got partners contributing. So let's go into the Wolters Kluwer CCH premium content and have a look at that content. Before I bring Ben in, I'll just show you, for example, let's click into an article and I'll show you what you can expect within the BOMA platform. So we've made it really easy for you, but we've also given you the power to make it yours. So BOMA provides, and in this case, Wolters Kluwer and BOMA provide an image for your social post. You can change this. There are over 4 million images free to use in BOMA. The social post is written for you. Again, you'll be able to edit this and change it and make it your own. Or if you're in a hurry, you could send that as it is. And this is the long form content, which is used for email. And if you can look over here on the right hand side, you'll also be able to share this as a blog on your website. So each piece of article will show you where you can share it. So obviously this is quite topical about family trusts. You could decide to send that article out. Let's have a look at the newer content here. Ben, can I bring you in to talk about some of the articles here at the top of the library?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, we could click on the top one there. That's no problems. Yeah. And I mean, this is something that, of course, is, again, you can email it, you can go social, you can go to the website. And this is something that if you are looking at putting those things together, or an email, say, for example, you mentioned a newsletter as well. These are some of the ones that you might be able to send off to a group of clients who may be running a small business, because ultimately this is the people who are going to be getting a lot of benefit from this type of content. Because one thing that was interesting about this particular one, the 20% bonus deduction for training your staff, is that it was announced in the March 2022 federal budget. Now, the March 2022 federal budget, as you will all remember, was actually delivered by the former government. And so since that time, there was an election, of course, and we have a new federal government. So ultimately, and sorry, you were going to say something, Liz?
No, that's all good.
No, yeah.
Agreeing.
And so ultimately, one thing that we all sort of thought about at the time was, even though both political parties sort of agreed that they were going to do this, we weren't really 100% certain whether they were going to act on that. In particular in opposition when they became in government, until you actually saw this on the arrive in our daily newsfeed. So it was something that, and as a result of that, our small business clients are sort of left in the lurch. and ultimately what we're trying to do is provide them with that sort of detail so that you can provide them with much more reasonable assurances that, oh no, this will go ahead, because ultimately it was left up in the air, and this is something that we can work
Reassure.
with our
Yeah.
customers going forward. The one thing that I wanted to definitely point out in terms of the content, the long form content, is I want to try and make sure that the concept around providing communications to your clients is providing them with a reason or a need to get in contact with you. You know, they need to know this information, and we give them some information. For example, we give them a time frame, we give them an expectation about how it's going to affect them, give them a couple of options, but ultimately the core reason behind this sort of content is for the customer, your clients, to give you a call back and say, hey, I need to know more about this. Can you please help me with this? Ultimately, for something like training your staff where you can get a 20% bonus deduction, it is one article that perhaps is a little bit self-explanatory. But Liz, if I can get you to go back into the content library.
And if I can just reiterate, that's exactly right. What you're saying is most of the articles are kind of in a nice plain English and not too sort of accounting speak. What is it? Why does it matter to you? And what do I need to do next? And usually with a call to action to say get in touch. And I think we also have some articles with downloadable guides attached as well, don't we?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, for more
I was
information.
Yeah, exactly right. If you click on the technology investment one, so this is, for example, this is a situation where, you know, these two things maybe go hand in hand, and they are different articles. But one thing that you can do is that you may be able to group an email so that you've got both of these items that are sitting there ready to be looked at by your clients, because ultimately the one thing that, like I just sort of mentioned, the staff training one, it's probably a little bit self-explanatory, but in this instance, the technology investment, you're going to want to provide your clients with a little bit of information about, you know, what's in and what's out, but ultimately you really want them to make sure that they're in contact with you before they actually go and start spending all of this money, to ensure that if the reason why they're spending it is to get the additional deduction, well, ultimately, you'd like to have a conversation with them first, because firstly, is it reasonable to say, is this the sole reason why you're doing this, just to get a little bit of an extra deduction? Does your business actually need it? And secondly, you do actually just want to be able to help them and provide them that guidance so that they make sure that they don't overspend, or they don't buy something that is actually ineligible for the
Right.
deductions. So
Yeah.
this is something that you can sort of show and provide to your clients in an easily sort of digestible form, like an email that sort of links both of these things together. So the customer would receive an email perhaps on their phone, and then they scroll down that email and they can look at items that they can provide, and we can provide them with more information. But ultimately, the idea of the both of these articles is so that your clients will get back in touch with you, and they'll get back in touch with you, relatively quickly. One would hope and expect, because they would want to make sure that, are they, will they be able to do it if they spend the money now, or otherwise.
Yeah. I'll go back into the content library, and we will show you how to send one of these in a campaign. But there is obviously, and I think, are these two both part of the previous government's, were they started by the previous government, or are they new, Ben?
The tax education course, I do believe it was something that was sort of submitted in the past. However, it was a lot more sort of generic in
Right.
terms of, it might have just been something that was, I think it sort of goes without saying that the former government was definitely quite heavy on its media releases. It released a lot of media releases, especially throughout the pandemic. And the one thing that So it definitely was something that did pop up maybe a couple of years ago, but we didn't really see anything from it, mainly because I think, in my opinion, the ATO was actually quite heavy in terms of its workload that it had over the past sort of few years, with the implementation of a range of different things, obviously things like JobKeeper and Cash Flow Boost, like they were sort of in charge of implementing those platforms that were for most businesses in the country. So they didn't really have much of an opportunity to sort of develop this program that could be in
Yeah,
place. And I mean, I think that the most important thing in this instance as well, so it's not necessarily, I think that in this instance, the one thing it's not necessarily something that is tax specifically related. It is more of an administrative thing, but it is always good to make sure that your clients are aware of the fact that, that if they do lodge late, that there are penalties that apply. And ultimately, we as practitioners have figured out ways in the past to get those penalties remitted, but they might be sort of closing those sort of gaps. And I think that we should read between the lines on this particular type of article that you would send your clients. It's going along the lines of, no, they're going to make you log in and do a course on an online platform, and if you don't do it, then they're going to fine you. And it's
yeah,
just another measure that they have up their sleeves so that they can um, look like they're more proactively, um, teaching the tax
right.
base to,
Mm. And I think
quite,
this
yeah,
content like this is also really useful on social. So if you're building your profile on social, and sort of starting to get engagement outside of your original client base, because you're writing articles that are showing that you are ahead of the game, this is an interesting topic for the sort of thing that you might click on to find out more information. Yeah, it does help to have those articles there. If you're not, you might decide you're going to send it directly in a newsletter or on its own to your clients, but a lot of these articles are also really good way to boost your profile and show your leadership and being across all of these things on social.
absolutely 100% agree. I mean, like a social media post on something like this will definitely show that you are somebody who takes things like, record keeping compliance and substantiation requirements seriously. And then that is ultimately there's ultimately a reflection of your professionalism as an accountant. Absolutely 100%.
And might get quite a few impressions on this one, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. Now, this is something that is it is very much newsworthy, and it's something that for example, we've all probably from time to time had a client that maybe owed the tax office a lot of money, and it had a dispute about it, and ultimately. The one thing that I wanted to sort of do with this content, yeah, you have to deal with it, right? The one thing that I wanted to sort of explain through the content, and it's sort of, this is maybe more of a website piece, a bit more of an information piece for people who are, you know, perhaps in a situation where they know that they're going to be in a bit of the gray area with the tax office. The one thing that the article does, and I think that it's a really, really good talking point that you can provide to your clients, is that it does delve into a little bit of these are the type of arrangements that are currently in place with the tax office. So if you've got a dispute in play, that this is sort of, and you can help somebody understand to run through the process as maybe as an opportunity in a preamble to what could be a debt recovery process from the ATO. You're
Yeah.
explaining it to them. These are the things that they are currently sort of able to do, things like 50-50 arrangements, and the way that they deal with disputes, because ultimately, somebody who's a client of yours may want to take a position that is a little bit grey, but ultimately, if you're taking the I think if you have a dispute with the ATO, ultimately it's your client that is suing the ATO at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. The regulator still has the right to ask for the money. It's up to you it's up to you as a plaintiff or the applicant to ask for the money back. So there's a new legislation that's tabled in Parliament that allows the tribunal itself, an opportunity to pause that debt recovery action in certain circumstances, which is a lot cheaper than having to go to the federal court, obviously.
Right. One other article I was quite interested in, and I think it's got sort of nice sort of general appeal right now, is the EV article, which talks about fringe benefit tax. Can you give us a bit of a briefing on that one?
Yeah, so at the moment, we have legislation that is, I believe it passed the House of Representatives last week. Now, obviously, I was actually kind of expecting it to pass during the current sitting. But obviously that sitting week, those 2 sitting weeks have now been postponed because of the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The Australian Parliament was postponed. So I was kind of expecting this to go through, and I believe it did go through the House of Parliament. So the House of Representatives, excuse me, maybe the day before. I just got to quickly check up on that if I could. But ultimately, the option will be to provide an exemption in fringe benefits tax if an individual is salary packaging essentially an electric vehicle. And this would come into effect from the 1st of July 2022. Ultimately, and I mean that's important because that's when that was the end of the beginning of the first quarter that happened after the transition of government from the Liberal National Coalition to the Labor Party. So It's not actually for a full FBT year, but ultimately it's only for new electric vehicles. And I think that one thing that we can do when we have big pieces of legislation is this is something that may want to go out to everybody, because you all have businesses who may have company cars and whatnot. And ultimately what you want to do is you want to provide them with a good opportunity to be fully made aware of exactly how they can benefit from a potential change in legislation. And this one here, in terms of the electric vehicles, is key, because ultimately the one thing that we all know is that even though motor vehicles for fringe benefits tax purposes do have concessional treatment available to it, that concessional treatment has been limited substantially over the past 10 or 15 years, to the point now where, if you do have a company car that is sitting in you do have a company car that you're salary packaging, say, to the director of the company, you want to make sure that business use percentage is quite high. What the fringe benefits exemption does for the electric vehicles is that it really just eliminates that whole thing. And ultimately, the one thing that I found when I did some more research and analysis, and I actually started to crunch some numbers around this, is actually understanding the value of the benefit that an individual has. And what I've got available for subscribers there is actually a worked example that I created. And the idea is that if you have people who are interested in this, or you want to put it through in an email or whatnot, this is actually something that you can directly show a customer who is trying to understand the numbers around, whether this thing is worth it.
Yeah. So just to be clear on that, if we go back to BOMA, this could be your email to a client, and they would get the link to the downloadable guide, which is just fantastic. And there's a number of articles, really clear advice, and set them up well for the conversation they can then have with you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because I mean, ultimately, in this instance, and I mean, we can spend a bit of time on this. I got no dramas because ultimately, the one thing that we can, I think, the big question is going to be, there's a fringe benefits tax exemption. So instead of paying fringe benefits tax, that you get the exemption. But on the shoe on the other foot is the electric vehicles are like 20, 25 grand more than a petrol car, because that's just the way that the market is running. So ultimately, the idea of running through a worked example is, are you going to get a benefit are you going to get a financial benefit of having an electric car over a petrol car, and after you take into consideration how much more money you have to pay. So you get a tax benefit on one side, but how much of that tax benefit is going to be absorbed by the extra expenditure that you have to have from an economic point of view. So obviously and I think that the worked example really does fundamentally sort of go through that. And the one thing that I wanted to show in the example is there's the line there that's right there about 2/3 of the way up on top of the screen, and it says there her business use percentage is 0. I wanted to sort of be very, very clear in the worked example that this is something that we can look at. The business use percentage is irrelevant because the exemption is irrelevant. So so the exemption makes the business use percentage irrelevant. And so that's sort of something that we can sort of look at and from a worked example perspective. Now, obviously, these sort of things do change if you start moving the parameters around, but ultimately, that's sort of the one thing that I wanted to show. And if you go down there and you can show the comparison of car costs there between the petrol and the electric car, you've got there the different savings that are in place from salary packaging to not salary packaging. And as you can see, sometimes with a petrol car, it can be quite negligible overall in terms of where you are especially at certain levels of income as well. So it's not a significant amount of difference in many instances. However, with the electric vehicle, the one thing that we did find is that the savings that you would make in the salary packaging an electric car with the FBT exemption is that it actually would probably cover the overall cost of the car over 4 years. So that additional, from an economic perspective, you would actually be better off salary packaging an electric car than not. So that's sort of interesting. And I think that was sort of one thing that we wanted to make sure and reiterate with our customers who utilize this product. And I think that the article itself does sort of explain this a little bit as well, is that's really the intent of the legislation. The intent of the legislation is, if you have a business, it is very, very beneficial to go in this direction if you from a financial and economic perspective. So that was the one thing that we wanted to show. Obviously, in these times of potential austerity that are existing throughout our economy, with interest rates and inflation quite high and whatnot. Obviously, there's not going to be many opportunities for us as tax advisors to really provide opportunities where our clients can get a real economic benefit by going in one direction versus another. I think over the next little bit, we're going to be sort of more pivoting to avoid risks and mitigating those risks over time. But in this instance, we wanted to definitely, because there's a massive financial benefit from it, we wanted to really highlight that so that you can forward that through in a campaign.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Why don't we take one of these articles, and I'll take the top one just because, as you said, we could create a newsletter out of this and show you very quickly how we can deliver that. So this will take a couple of minutes, really. We're going to deliver. We can deliver email, social, website. If I click deliver, you can see here email, social, all my channels. For the purpose of the demo, let's do all my channels. And our first step is just to name it. No one sees this, but if, for example, I was wanting to send this just to clients and not prospects, I might name that here. Or to employers. Maybe I've got my my clients tagged as employers or not employers. So let's click Start. And in this content template step, this is our opportunity to make a change here, which will be seen across all channels, but there is more opportunities to change it. I've just added a bit of fake text there, but there are more opportunities to change it at the channel level. Here is the long form content, and I will be able to link my social post to this long form content. It is also the basis of my email. So we're going to click Continue, and this next stage you'll see the channels that I've got connected. So when you set up your BOMA account, you simply link your social accounts. So I've got LinkedIn Business, LinkedIn Personal, Twitter, Facebook, and I've uploaded my contacts so I can email them. At each stage, I can see I've got that edited bit of text there, but I'm going to take that out. But I can preview what that post will look like. And I could change all of this text, and I could also change the image. So you can do as much or as little as you like to make it unique to your clients and to your business. LinkedIn Personal will look very similar in the preview, as it's also on LinkedIn. And on Twitter, this is what my tweet will look like. Again, I've got that text in here, and I could change that. This link will take me to the full article on a branded web page, which will have my branding on it, my accounting firm branding. Facebook's just one little extra step. Because Facebook has rules around fake news, they won't. They have rules around third parties posting on someone's behalf, so it's simply a copy and paste. But again, I could use my time here to write something quite different. And of course, you might want to have LinkedIn Business more formal, LinkedIn Personal, you might want to add your own opinion, your personal comment there. And on Facebook, again, you might want to say something a little bit different here. We'll add something, we could add a hashtag. If you're not familiar with hashtags, they're not particularly complicated, but it's really just it works like a miniature search engine. And so if it was, for example, on tax deduction, I mean, I'm not sure, or tax, then someone searching that hashtag is more likely to see your post come up. So it just tries to amplify your message a bit on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. On email, let's have a look here. So again, the work is done for you and you can change it. Your subject line is written. The main thing here, if you are sending a newsletter, I always say stay away from September newsletter because you're less likely to get people to open that. But this, for example, might be one of the topics in your newsletter, and it is a nice topic because it's you're going to encourage people to click in and go, oh, there's an opportunity for me to get a tax deduction here. Preview description is that first bit of text you see in your email. Again, worth making sure that's motivating for someone to open it. And your from name, which is set up in your settings, but you can change that if, say, there was another partner in the firm that was going to receive the replies to that email. So all of that stuff you can change, and then let's work out who we're sending it to. So we can filter manually, but we can also filter using the tags, which you will individually set up for your accounts, for your clients, because they'll be specific to you. See if I've got, this is a demo account, but for example, retail, for example, I would, assume that your retail clients have got employees that need training, and therefore I'm going to put retail in there. Save and close. Last step is select your template, and when you've set up BOMA, you've also uploaded your logo, and BOMA will pull that logo to bring the colours into your template. You can choose at this point how you want your email to look. If we were choosing a short format like this, I'll try not to click on it, that might be what we'd use for a newsletter. I'm going to choose the full article. So BOMA's kind of given you a quick way to quickly populate your email. There's not too much editing and sort of fiddling around with things. Most of the controls on the right hand side are drag and drop. If we had chosen this one, we would simply be dragging it in, and then we could go back into the content library and add more content. If we chose that short form, you're suddenly creating a newsletter. You could then bring in a placeholder role at the top and say, you know, hi everyone, I hope, you know, whatever it is, your nice little intro. So if this was our email, I would like to add a personal greeting. So I'm clicking within the email and writing, dear. Merge tags allows you to choose the first name, and that will pull the first name from my contact list. But again, coming down through this email, there might be something, well, actually, for me, I'm going to change the wording here. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to change some wording here. And you might have something specific here, contact this particular partner, and that's the partner that will contact me, and that's the partner that you've got as your return email. Other things that you can do within your newsletter, within your email, sorry, is you could bring in a button. So if for example, you were writing, you had other information on your website, just drag in that button and change the wording on it. Let's make it contact us. And then over on the right-hand side, where do you want that button to go? If you think people are reading your email on their phones, it could be make a call or send an SMS. If they're reading it on their laptop, then maybe it's open a web page, which could be your contact us page or email, and it opens up an automatically sort of pre-filled email where the subject is the staff training tax deduction. And you could write a little bit of text in there so that it opens up in their email client. Once you're happy, you can preview and then save and close. So it's all extremely kind of easy, but again, you know, you can make it more sort of customized to your accounting firm, or you can just send it. Send a test email to yourself or someone in the office before you go, and then schedule. And you can schedule it for today, or you can schedule for a specific time. Once we've done that, I'm going to go back to the dashboard and quickly have a look in the campaigns tab. You can see I've sent a couple of scheduled campaigns. I can see where I've sent those: email, Facebook, LinkedIn, business and personal, and Twitter. When this campaign has been sent, I will then be able to go in. Obviously, the data is not here yet, and I will see the impressions, clicks, likes, shares, etc. across social, and open rates in email, who opened it, who received it, and who clicked on links if there were links. So just quickly back in that content library to give you a bit of an idea of how the Wolters Kluwer BOMA partnership works. So that content is updated regularly, and as Ben said, it's based on timely events, so new legislation. And Ben, you know, I understand what do we see coming up over the next few months? Like, you know, I understand there's a federal budget coming up in October. Will you be covering that in BOMA?
Yeah, what is it now? It's about maybe 6 weeks away, thereabouts, maybe just under 6 weeks away now. And usually I am expected to be in Canberra. I'll be part of the press gallery that's there. Ultimately, my goal when I'm doing the federal budget will be that by opening of business the following day, Eastern time, there will be, I think last time there was 3 articles, 3 campaigns that were ready to go,
Yeah,
based on
I suspect they won't be live anymore, but they might be.
I don't know if I put budget in there, but yeah, there was definitely one. I did one on fuel excise. I did one on a couple of the other ones. I can't exactly remember off the top of my head. But ultimately, ultimately that's what my goal is going to be.
Yeah.
Is that you know you're going to see the treasurer, Jim Chalmers, do the budget at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then sort of by 9 a.m. the next morning, I will most likely have for you at least a highlights page. So then what Wolters Kluwer generally do to all of our customers is that we provide a highlights, which is all of the little tax measures as one line item, and you can forward that through to your customers just as a generic sort of for your information section, which is available on all our platforms. So you'll definitely get that, but you'll get the opportunity to email that very quickly and see who has been reading that information, because that might also help you in terms of the follow-up with the additional campaigns that are there, over the next over the next weeks that exist. But no, that's the goal. That's the goal. Hopefully, is to probably three there overnight, and then up to 15 or 20 within the next month.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Shall I pass back so that we can talk a little bit about how people can access BOMA and Wolters Kluwer IQ? Shall I pass back to you, Charles?
Thanks, Liz. Just let me know on my screen.
And whilst Charles is just getting there, please note that if you do have any questions for us, so we're able to stay on the line, and you're able just to put that into the questions box in your viewer tab there in the GoToWebinar app, and we can answer any questions that you may have. But I'll leave it up over to you, Charles.
Fantastic, thanks Ben, and thanks so much for really diving into the amazing amount of content and sort of valuable insight that I think is available in CCH IQ. So look, we've sort of split this next section. It'll only take a minute or two, just because there will be people who maybe are already on BOMA, already in Wolters Kluwer, or maybe not at all. So just to clarify, if you want to get started with BOMA, you can go to bomamarketing.com and you can sign up for a free 14-day trial. We'll obviously onboard you and train you. And then once you're going, you can then, if you are not with CCH, with Wolters Kluwer, you can obviously speak to them about joining up, or you can add on for a small fee, you can add Wolters Kluwer CCH onto BOMA. Otherwise, you can go to Wolters Kluwer and sign up directly for CCH IQ as well. And I think that's been split out. So now it used to be that CCH IQ was part of an overall tax solution, and I understand in the last few weeks this is now available just as a straight one-off solution that you can purchase individually. So if you are already a Wolters Kluwer subscriber, but you're not on BOMA, or you are on BOMA and you'd like to get the Wolters Kluwer content in BOMA, that's fantastic. All you need to do is ask your solutions manager for the coupon code, and then enter it into the BOMA settings content library, and that will actually switch on the premium library in BOMA free of charge. As I mentioned before, if you are just a BOMA user and you'd like to try out this content, but you're not a Wolters Kluwer user as well, you can add this onto your BOMA subscription for $40. It's very easy. Just get in contact with support and ask to add it, and we'll add it onto your account, and it'll be taken off at your next anniversary of your subscription. So hopefully very easy ways that you can access it. Do reach out to ourselves, or as Ben said, do reach out to the team at Wolters Kluwer. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions at either end about Wolters Kluwer or BOMA, and maybe how it can benefit your practice. Susie, I know you've been keeping an eye on questions. I realize we've also gone a little bit over time. Were there any questions that have come up in the meantime?
Thanks, Charles. No questions have been asked at the moment, so it's fine for you to end the webinar. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you all so much. We'll be sending this recording out, as I said, in the next 24 hours. If you do have any questions on top of that, you can just reply to that email, and there will be also more information about how you can access Wolters Kluwer and BOMA in there as well. So just leaves me to thank you, Liz and Ben, so much for taking us through so ably the content and the platform.
Thanks,
yeah, no
Charles.
worries.
Everyone.
Thank you very much for all your time and attention today, folks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Cool. Thanks so much, Susie. Thanks, everyone.
I'll end the webinar now. Thank you. Bye-bye.